أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، يا حي يا قيوم يا من لا إله إلا أنت. وأفضل الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبو القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وجميع الشهداء ورحمة الله وبركاته. در قدم اول از حضار گرامی و از عزیزان اجازه می طلبم تا خدمت برادر عزیزمان عالی جان و فامیل ریزمانشی تسلیت خود و غم شریک خود عرض کنم و از ایشان و از دیگر عزیزان متعلقین پوزش بطلبم که در وقت غم شریکی و سوگواری بنده نتوانستم در خدمت برسم. انشاءالله که خداوند مرحومه را طریق رحمت خود قرار دهد و با محسنین انشاءالله که جواب باشد. با صلوات بلند محمدی. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ. And the one who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who has informed and sincere belief and trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God guides their hearts. وَمَنْ يُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ. God guides their hearts. Now, the heart is very central, as you know, to the functioning of the human being. And as such, the heart is critical to the functioning and the proper functioning of our religion, of our Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different ways informs us of this in the Quran. Why the heart is the source of receipt and reception of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance, of mercy. Why the heart is that central place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's remembrance and recollection are to occur. We have many narrations which say that the best dhikr is not verbal, it's not simply with the tongue, but it is that which manifests in the heart and transfers into action. So for those who spend a lot of time in the formula of dhikr, various adhkar that can be recited, but when it comes to the moment of action, they hesitate and or we fail, then we have not really engaged in dhikr. We haven't engaged in dhikr. We've engaged in verbal exercise. And dhikr is not verbal exercise. Dhikr is recalling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dhikr is seeing the signs and the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dhikr is to be in awe of the reality that is the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reality of haqq that manifests itself in creation, that manifests itself in the cosmos, that manifests itself in us. And this is why in different places in the Quran, as we are to understand Arbaeen, 40 days, the question that you and I have to ask ourselves is, what has happened to my heart in these 40 days? What has changed? What has transpired? What have I allowed to enter into my heart, rehabilitate it, transform it, illuminate it, purify it, change it? And what have I taken out of my heart that was diseased? We all have different diseases in our heart. It varies from person to person. For one person, their disease is lust. For one person, their disease is the pursuit of fame. For one person, their disease is power. For one person, their disease is greediness. For one person, their disease is anger. You see? It varies from person to person. How much of this have I been able to extract from my heart? Right? Arbaeen and Karbala is supposed to be a mirror that reflects back to you and I that in these 40 days, if you have been true and you have truly shed sincere tears, these tears have washed away the impurities of the heart. There are some people in their approach to the commemorations of these events, or for those who are going to ziyarah, and they have this beautiful opportunity to visit the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, to go to Karbala. You see, oftentimes they're encouraged to cry. Again, big idiots. People who are reciting poems, people who are narrating these stories of lamentation, they are encouraging people to cry, encouraging people to lament, to wail. Right? This is not the aim, though. If the expectation is that the loudness of my cry confirms for me the purity of my heart, that's not the case. A lot of the ways in which we commemorate the A'imma alayhi salatu wassalam is based on our own misconceptions, traditions that we have reached and that we have received without critical analysis and thinking. We don't know many of the sources as to why people are doing certain things. And we have now encamped ourselves into opposing sides. One side says that you have to strike yourself with chains if you love Imam Hussein. Okay? One side says that you have to walk on coal and run on coal if you truly want to love Imam Hussein. One side says that you have to take mud and dirt and dust and you have to cover your entire body with it in order to convey that you actually love Imam Hussein. One says that you have to strike your head and beat yourself and say that you are the dog of Hussein in order to truly convey that you are a lover of Imam Hussein. And these are, for the most part, emotional, reactionary approaches to religion that don't have a basis in the actual teachings of religion. You see many instances from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam where they criticized people for the way that they approached them, telling them that God has sent you and God has granted you honor. Why do you devalue and debase yourselves? What kind of religion, what kind of love, what kind of system that is pure and true allows someone to wail like a dog or to crawl as a communication and conveyance of devotion? The highest devotion in Islam is what? It's prayer. And prayer is a movement of beauty and art if you actually pay attention to it. It is a movement that is very beautiful. It's very artistic. It's very poetic. And it's something that is transformative to the human being. Now, prayer can only be understood if the heart of the individual has the capacity to know what's happening. Oftentimes, just like in language, we say we convey particular words without actually being connected to those words. This is the limits and the abuse of language. For example, someone says, I love you. That's a very beautiful expression. But someone says love for every little thing in the world. I love this, I love that, I love this, I love that. That becomes very cheap, does it not? Very empty. Right? And you've been in instances where you can sense the insincerity of the words. And the human being has this very unique way of being able to sense when someone is not being sincere. Now, sincerity in prayer is key. Many of the teachers of akhlaq, they talk about the importance of perfecting your prayer. The one way that we are able to perfect our prayer, and really the only way that we're able to perfect our prayer, is to focus back on the heart. Now, I want to offer one example. You all know the various stories connected to the life of Prophet Musa sallallahu alaihi, from his birth to the difficulty, all of these things that you know better than me. You also know the very famous verse in the Quran, وَقُلْ رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِنْ لِسَانِي إِلَى آخِرِ الْقَوْلِ. And you know that this usage that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling and saying, teaching Prophet Musa sallallahu alayhi, teaching him how to be able to arrive at the moment that's in front of him. This is not easy. We don't have time to get into the background. You understand the background. But simply how to prepare to meet the moment that's in front of him. And say, my Lord, my beloved. Rabb is an expression of proximity and sincerely calling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rabb ishrah li. This is an expansion. You know, we say sharh, right? It's an expansion, it's an illumination, it's an explication, right? And it's to open, it's to grant an expanse. To what? To my heart, to my chest. Now, there are different ways that people have interpreted this. Some say that this is the intellect and the mind. Some say it's the heart. This is both valid, and they don't really disagree with one another. Maybe one way for us to think about this, to understand the importance of the heart, for those of you who, for example, engage in literature, you have many books that are commentaries on something, yes? What are those books referred to? As a misal, Sharh Haqiqat al-Haqiqa, Sharh Diwan al-Hafiz, Sharh, etc. This Sharh is a reading, a close reading. It's a line by line. One way to maybe understand this verse is and say, oh my Lord, grant me the language to read my heart, the grammar of the heart, the way that I can understand my own heart. And make easy for me that which I have been tasked with. The beauty of the du'as in the Quran and du'as in general, for example, the du'as that have come to us from the Ahlul Bayt, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is that these du'as are things that we have inherited and received. Every du'a that is applied to a prophet in the Quran is also something that you and I have inherited and received, meaning that we have been given permission by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to also say this. If we had not been given permission by God, these things wouldn't be in the Quran. So whether the dua is La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin, it's a transformative formula granted to a prophet, right? That you and I have also been given access to. As is this dua of Prophet Musa sallallahu alaihi. Now our amal, what we've been tasked with, is not the same as Prophet Musa sallallahu alaihi. But you and I also have a amal in our lives. We have a particular task, we have a particular responsibility, we have a particular risala and obligation that we must meet. What Karbala and Arbaeen does is it awakens you and I to recognize and to realize and to have the authenticity and the bravery to engage with this risala, engage with this amr, recognize what's at hand. If you and I come back on Arbaeen and there has been no change in our lives, did we really commemorate? Did we really attend? Did we really listen? If I approach prayer the same way, what has changed? How have I celebrated and how have I engaged in the remembrance of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam? It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. That's why these gatherings I mentioned during those nights, these gatherings have to become a place of learning, a place of reflection, a place of sincerity, not simply a place of ritual recital. Ritual recital is not sufficient for transformation. If the heart is not at play and it's not there, if the understanding of the time and siyaq that we are in, the context that you and I find ourselves in, if that's not understood, you can't deliver the message. And that's why at the end, the Prophet says, وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِنْ لِسَانِي, right? And resolve for me this uqdah from my tongue. Now, some people say that Prophet Musa sallallahu alaihi is asking for, eloquence and release and all of these things. One way to also understand this is that the Prophet is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove the limits in speech so that he can convey the fullness of truth to the people. You see? Not that he does not know, but that they do not have the capacity to understand. When someone as a listener does not have the capacity to understand, no matter what you say, it will not reach them. And there's some who come into this gathering, they're not here to listen. They're not here to listen. There's some who come to this gathering with this intention that, Ya Allah, allow something to reach my heart. We were told when we were young, by our fathers, by our teachers, when you go to the mosque, when you go to the center, when you go to a lecture, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open your heart. This is how. This is not exaggeration. When you go to a talk, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open your heart. What's the point of coming to a place if you are not listening? If you are not thinking that you need change, that I need change, what's the point of coming? It's like coming as a closed vessel, closed door. No matter how much you knock, no matter how much you try to turn the knob, it won't open. But just like those windows over there has been left open, the air can come, sound can reach. And you and I are in need of the voices and the sound of one another. Right? This is not only, in the sense, something that empties the difficulties and the anxieties and the pain of the heart. Right? One of the most beautiful traditions that we have in this religion is that of mourning for someone who has passed away. We are told as Muslims that when someone passes away, even if you do not know them, attend the tadfeen, attend the prayer of someone who has passed away. We are told as Muslims to visit graveyards. Are we not? We are told as Muslims that when someone passes, at least call them and tell them, and if you cannot attend, express words of condolence. These words are very transformative. They do something to the heart. If someone sits there and they listen to 100, 200, 300 people tell them, may God forgive them. May God grant them heaven. May God grant you Salim. This does something to the person. We are told to provide and to make food for the grieving families. That's one less thing that they have to worry about, right? And the poet very beautifully says, to have a one of the most beautiful lines of poetry, or only for those who can understand the subtlety and the beauty of these lines. To have a قابل خالی کنم من هم که بر خود همچو کوه از بی صدایی باغ می‌گردم. He says, offer like a nazar, right? A beautiful extension. Offer a words as a gift, as a spiritual gift, so that I too may empty the heaviness of my heart, the anxieties and the difficulties of my heart. Because like a mountain, lacking voice, lacking sound, lacking an echo, I have become heavy, stagnant, difficult. When we come here, when someone sits here, I don't know how others do it. I know my beloved brother, Arbaeen, always says very beautiful things. God knows how much of it applies to me and how much of it is his own husn and nadar. But when I come here, I do things a little different. Some don't like it, but that's okay. Because if our aim is simply to please people, there's a problem. A speaker should have independence. They should have independence. They should have independence of thought. They should have bravery in how they speak. They should have sincerity. They should have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they should have a sense of accountability. This, at times, leads you to say some things or do some things that may seem a little misaligned with tradition. Some people expect for me to come here and recite narrations that lead to tears and crying. And that has its own place. But if someone comes and sheds tears for Imam Hussein sallallahu alayhi, but they don't have good akhlaq, they are a calamity to this religion. If someone comes and listens, but they don't prioritize their prayer, they pose a danger to Islam, a danger to themselves. If we have families with children and with youth, and they don't know anything about prayer, they don't know anything about the Quran, they don't know anything about Islamic ethics and akhlaq, what are we doing as families? What are we doing as a community? Who are these programs meant to serve? What's the point of Arbaeen if our youth are standing in the halls talking about things, not attending prayer, not identifying actively as committed Muslims? What have we done? How much have we failed? When will we wake up? When will we wake up? If we treat Arbaeen as a ritualistic commemoration without conveying how it is of use to us today in our lives today, how Islam aids us as individuals how Islam transforms communities, societies, the world. No matter how much I can sit here and talk about philosophy and cite this book and cite that book, it doesn't serve anything. It doesn't serve anything. So this Arbaeen is a starting point, inshallah, for you and I, that if we are granted life, next year when we come to this day and to the month of Muharram, we have come as changed people. We have come as individuals who have engaged all of these days in this dua to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the literacy of the heart. Rabb ishrah li sadri. Give us the literacy of the heart so that we can read our needs. We can cure our diseases. We can infuse light in our hearts through your guidance. And that guidance is in need of sincere, informed belief. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِنْ بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهُ. If you and I sincerely believe, our hearts will be guided, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance and move. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our hearts and to guide us and to protect us and to perfect for us our akhlaq. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inspire us and to open our hearts so that we can become true followers of Imam Hussein sallallahu alayhi. Ya Allah, allow us to understand the true philosophy and aim of Karbala. Allow us to be individuals who emulate and follow and adhere to the love of Imam Hussein sallallahu alayhi and his love of you. The love of Imam Hussein sallallahu alayhi for God is the manifestation of Karbala. غفر الله لنا ولكم والحمد لله ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صلاة